How y'all doing? This is Zarek Zahakran here with Matt from the Migrant Thought podcast. Say hello, Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt. My channel is Microthought YouTube channel. Awkward pause.
Yes, indeed. We're keeping that awkward pause in, by the way. Now, today we're going to be talking about fan products versus corporations and the whole idea of intellectual property. I know I bring this up way too much, but, I felt like another person's perspective in here would be a good thing, so let's talk about it. Let's face it, Bethesda could come up to me and say, you can't be taking money for your lore videos anymore. There's that.
When it comes to this new level of monetization for YouTube and everything, like for the Axanar thing, I always find it's only product like concept infringing if they're taking direct money from selling a product.
Yes.
If it's monetization based on ads, they're selling their audience, not the other stuff. And YouTube is going giving them money. And the reason I was on the side of Axanar is they did not make money from selling the product. They made money. They basically say, we can do this. We just need money to build the sets and everything and start our studio, and then we'll put it out. And they were selling a service, not a product.
The problem is that it is inexorably bound to that intellectual property.
When it comes to these products where they are free, there's a reason these exist. There's a demand for them. And the less likely money is involved, the more I feel like they have a right to exist.
Yeah.
And when there's different levels of monetization, then it gets a bit more gray area. I'm still on the side of Axanar because they went in and told CBS, we're doing this, what do we have to do to prevent the infringing? And they basically said, we're going to stop you. We'll tell you when you're going over. And basically they set up a bee's nest where, they have $1 million now. Let's get half that money. And that money was funded by the fans. And the reason they're claiming the infringement is because they have a TV series and a movie coming out.
Yeah.
And they're selling that TV series as part of their version of Hulu or Netflix.
Yeah.
And it's behind a paywall. And if they're basically stomping on the fans for money that could have gone to that series, and now that they've stomped on the fans, they're not going to go to your CBS series. I don't care if you're having that. It's it's irrelevant.
Let me ask you something. As far as the lawsuit, They're
going forward with it.
No. Did the Axanar let's put it like this. Did the Axanar people keep the correspondence that implied consent?
I believe so. They went in and physically talked with them.
Yeah.
They said they're prepared to go to court with them.
Shit. Yeah, because if it was done in any kind of email, written form, anything, then there is proof, tangible proof that that there was a blanket consent given. In other words, they don't owe a penny from the point where that consent was given up until the point where the consent was retracted. And I'm gonna say this right now for anyone listening. I am not a lawyer, but this is my personal understanding of the law. In my limited expertise, which is very limited, is that once consent is given, that's it. You've just screwed yourself. And what I think they're hoping for was either a swift settlement, which is like half the money, or they were hoping for some kind of plug to be put on it where they could steal as much money as possible. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm. Where were we?
Well, we were talking about Axanar at this point, and the idea.
There's not many reports on how it's going. And the way they did is they basically put it out on New Year's, and it was really slimy of how they did it. And they finally acknowledged it on a talk show where one of the directors is part of it. He's on Collider Heroes, I believe, and they said they finally acknowledged it, and I wanted them to talk about it, but they didn't go into many details about it, unfortunately. And I'm very interested in this situation.
You can't once a lawsuit has been declared, because then you're poisoning the audience, not the audience, but the jury, the public perception. Damage has been done to the case, and it's your fault. Whoever speaks up. So there's a reason why they can't talk about it, unfortunately, until it's done with which is, again, doubly unfortunate because then you can't garner public support.
The reason I think this is relevant to what was it, Nostalrius?
Nostarius,
Okay.
okay, for those of you who don't know, basically, Blizzard started off with World of Warcraft. I was in the original beta, so I personally have a lot of experience with World of Warcraft. I played it through until, I don't want to say today, but the last expansion, flopped, basically. That's as far as I got. But I think back fondly on that first year or two of World of Warcraft, and I say I want that again. And Blizzard said in a BlizzCon, when someone asked, are you going to release a vanilla server, they said straight to that kid's face, you don't want that.
I saw that.
And in response to this, people started to dissect the client code and create a server, an emulated server that basically did all of the things, interacted with the client. Then they built their own versions of the scripted events and dungeons and everything. They had to do this from scratch. This was a monumental effort, but they managed to fully recreate the vanilla experience from original World of Warcraft. We're talking hundreds of man-hours, and they did it. And that immediately proved Blizzard wrong. I want to take that clip of "you don't want that," and I want to put it on loop like for 7 seconds, just with me like glaring at the screen, because the fact that there were thousands of people playing the Nostalrius server means that there was a market there, and that was a market of people that weren't going to play vanilla WoW because they got what they wanted, something that Blizzard isn't willing to provide people anymore. And
I guess we'll go with what my stance are at this.
Yeah.
I see both points of view. Blizzard, because it's their IP, they have to actively go out and enforce it, or they can lose their copyright, from what I understand with it. But at the same time, there's ways of doing it where you just say, nope, you can't do that anymore. And on the Nostalrius side, yes, they were doing it illegal. It was officially pirated. I wouldn't put it in the same boat as people that are actually touring games and everything. But at the same time, it exists because there's a market, and Blizzard is more damaging their product because they're not listening to their audience at this point, and that's why it exists. And from how they handled it, it existed for a year, and there's thousands of players. Even on the last day, most of the audience popped in and everything, and what Blizzard basically did is slap the wrist. He said, you can't do that anymore. You have to go back to it. What I basically think what happened was a suit at Blizzard that doesn't understand any of this. So they had 1 million active users. That doesn't mean 1 million people or some number. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong, but it's something around that. It doesn't mean active people. It means in accounts. So people can create multiple accounts.
Yes.
And they just saw that number and they thought, if we shut this down, they'll come back to our game. The reason it exists is because your game sucks. It's changed. Offer the original version. You could have worked with these people that created it, and they're complaining like it would be too difficult. We're working on it, but it'd be too difficult to set up. That already exists. Work with a team. Put it back on your official stuff.
Yeah.
Put it behind a subscription. Not as much as the new version, but put it behind a subscription. You'll start making money, and you can transfer their accounts over to that, and they just have to pay a subscription. People that don't want to pay the subscription, fine, it's gone. It's the same as deleting it. But people that really do want to officially support the game, but this is the only alternative, will go and pay the subscription.
Here's how I see it. If all they could do, I know they have to have the old infrastructure up somewhere.
They actually said it was lost.
Yes. They said it was lost. Well, then yes, work with those people. The point is, all they have to do at this point is keep it behind the same subscription. Okay, literally, you subscribe to World of Warcraft, you get access to classic servers, and you get access to new servers. EverQuest did this, where they created a progressive server, and it brought a lot of people back. It wasn't enough to save it for Sony, because Sony didn't want to deal with it, so they pawned it off. But you look at Turbine and the Asheron's Call thing, and Asheron's Call went to Asheron's Call 2. They did the same thing. They provided 2 services under the same roof. The thing is that you have 2 competing services under the same roof, yes, but you'd be surprised how many people will be willing to pay. Like, and what you do is you have plugs for the new server all the time. So what you do, you have the old server for people to come back to, and every once in a while you have like a login pop-up saying like, this just added to the new expansion, come try it out, you know. There are enough ways that they could divert people into the newer content, or, you know, advertise the hell out of the newer content using the older content. And the best thing about the older content is they don't have to maintain it. They have to put it up into a working state, and that's it. Just leave the servers up in perpetuity. And it requires no effort on their part once it's established, meaning that they could just rake in the cash from all the bonus subscriptions for people who just wanted to play vanilla. And so if they were planning to do that, then I could understand. But what they've done is they poisoned the well so much that now people are unsubscribing. People who had a subscription to WoW.
Out of spite.
Yes, out of spite, they're unsubscribing because they were hoping vainly that Blizzard would catch on, that they would see, oh look, there's 1 million people playing this thing. Maybe we should go ahead and implement some of those old features, or have like an old mode or something like that, you know, a retro mode to our servers.
There is actually, they did this with RuneScape. There was an update where it changed it from nothing new, and the developer admitted, yeah, this is bad. So they put the classic version back on there. But in the end, more people subscribe to the new version, use the new version than the old classic one, but both are still there.
That's right. Exactly. And I think that could work too, because for a minimal amount of effort, you can bring in money. But the problem is that they become very controlling. And like with Microsoft, for instance, anytime a Microsoft developer says, why would you ever want to do blank? That is developer arrogance. That is the kind of thing that gets your company buried. That's why Microsoft is doing worse than they were before. It's why they have a horrible reputation in the industry now. And it's why people are clamoring to get the newest Linux. You know, to develop for the newest Linux. As much as people don't want to admit it, as far as, you know, mainstream PC wants to pretend Linux isn't a thing, developers are developing for it now.
Another thing is, if they don't even want to deal with it, they could just license the old source code to these private servers, and then they would have to put up a subscription, a little money to maintain the actual server to the guys that are hosting it, and the rest of the money goes to Blizzard. They don't even have to deal with it, and then there would be multitude of servers out there that are private.
I was going to say, they could have done a licensing program, license your intellectual property out to Nostalrius, and now Nostalrius is required to hand over 50% of its donations to Blizzard. You know, so like they'll double their donation goal, saying, hey, we need more money now because Blizzard's taking a cut, but they won't shut us down. Unfortunately, remember that Blizzard is, again, very controlling with their intellectual property. They said to one person who wanted to make a Warcraft movie, we would rather bury our franchise and never make another cent from it again than let you screw up our movie.
Then there's a movie coming out.
Oh, no, but this was like, okay, you know the guy named Bull? He did like Blood Rain and a bunch of other movies.
Oh, that guy. Oh, no.
Yeah.
That was because the reason those movies are so bad is because of some profiting scam in Europe.
It was a German tax loophole where if his movie loses money, then they recompensate him for it or something like that. He'd take out massive amounts of debt to make these movies. Government or a financial institution pay him to pay off his debts, the ones he took out to make the movie. That's how I understand it. I don't know if that's necessarily exactly the way it works, but like German tax loophole was what I was told.
The guy that does Game Theory covered it, and that's
I like Game Theory. I used to like Did You Know Gaming as well, but I just watched Game Theory now.
Obsessed with Friday Nights at Fate. You know what I'm talking about, Freddy's.
Yeah. Five Nights at Freddy's. You have to admit that Five Nights at Freddy's World, that was an interesting...
It's fascinating. I'm never going to play the game, though.
Yeah, but no. Five Nights at Freddy's World was a RPG made by the maker of Five Nights at Freddy's, which was...
He actually used to do Christian games, and then that one Christian game came out, this is creepy, and he changed it into Basically a glorified fan fiction.
No, what I was going to say about Five Nights at Freddy's World, it was so bad that he took it down, like gave everybody their money back, and said, "When I'm ready to release this in earnest, you can all have it for free."
That's a good way to go with your audience.
Yeah,
Builds trust and everything.
exactly, because it was bad. He rushed it. He knew it was bad, so he fixed it, and now people
Goodwill. That's what it's called.
Goodwill, yes, because people are now going to be more trusting, with his next product. Like, this guy probably learned from his mistakes, He lost money on this to give it back to people, give the money back to people. So he's not going to make that mistake again. His next product is probably going to be decent.
And even though he puts stuff out yearly, it seems relatively polished. It must be pretty simple to make compared to other developers that want to put out Assassin's Creed every year. And I boycott your company now.
Yes. I actually enjoyed Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Oddly enough,
that is, if I get one more Ubisoft game, that was before I decided to boycott them. Yeah. I'll buy Black Flag.
Okay, because here's the thing. Is that Black Flag has these awesome on the sea moments, or not moments, like 90% of the game, and every once in a while it decides you got to dock now and you got to be Assassin's Creed again. And I'm like, oh, I got to get through this Assassin's Creed part so I can get back to the pirate stuff.
Yeah. No, I just got so tired with their story. They kept milking and putting it out, and then cliffhanger. Ugh. I really was into a story during Revelations. That last scene where their city is blowing up, that is an amazing narration. Mm-hmm. And then they do a Deus Ex Machina to kill Desmond off because he's not that good of a character in 3. And they haven't expanded upon it that much as far as I can tell.
No, but going back to Blizzard and the Nostalrius thing, really the way it works is they're giving up free money for what looks like developer pride. That's what it looks like. It looks like some kind of weird pride thing going on because they in the beginning they had dungeons where only 3% of the whole population ever experienced it because it was that difficult. And so they realized that they were making content that practically nobody was seeing, and it was pissing them off because, why are we spending all this time making these incredible art assets, and making these sound files and whatnot if nobody's experiencing? The thing is that the few people who are experiencing it were putting it up on YouTube, and everyone was flipping the hell out. Like, they were redoubling their efforts, reinvesting in the game in order to get that for themselves.
Which one was this again?
This was original World of Warcraft.
Okay.
During the classic pre-expansion years, they actually had the last dungeon that they released, only 4% of the population ever experienced it because it was that difficult and it had that many steps that led up to it. The thing is that people, the few guilds that did make it, were really hailed as these amazing guilds. They were held up as some of the gaming's best, and so they were given sponsorships, by other companies and stuff. And they live streamed, they did YouTube videos and everything, and it was amazing for these few people. And other people wanted to be those people, so it created a snowball effect where everyone was trying hard. It wasn't a casual game, it was a hardcore game. And what I'm trying to say is that people invested in the game because it was worth investing into. That's what I'm saying. Is that Blizzard created this thing, and they changed their design direction only because they were offended at the concept that only a small fraction would experience all the content they made. So they made the content accessible to everybody. It doesn't matter how shit you are now, because you can just go into what's called a raid finder, and you'll get an easy mode version of the thing that the higher end people are doing. And from a development perspective, that means that they only had to put out one set of content for everyone to experience. It's weird because they're getting lazy, and they're prideful about their laziness.
Well, no, Not all. I will never experience all of the content that Skyrim's put in.
Mm-hmm.
Oblivion, Fallout 3, New Vegas. I'm still finding
Yeah.
stuff in Fallout 3 when I play Tale of Two Wastelands.
Mm-hmm.
And occasionally I run by this random cave I've never saw. I typically ignore caves in Skyrim because I didn't like them.
Yeah.
And in Fallout 4, I'm still finding small stuff with random encounters. I started using a Vertibird, so I'm probably not going to count them in anymore. But the reason for that is not everyone will experience everything.
Yeah.
There will be a niche amount. You put like a pool where everyone can experience, and for those that want to go the extra mile, there's an extra reward. You don't think everyone's going to experience everything. Some people don't even care, and that's why they don't go.
That's right.
I really enjoyed Star Trek Online, but the reason they're developing just got lazier and lazier. I love that I ran into Clone Riker's son.
Yeah.
And he was Riker's nephew. And they expanded upon that story in Star Trek Online. And then at the same time, I'm fighting for galaxy variants of Romulan warbirds with my galaxy ship, and I don't care.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Because, let's face it, if something exists in the lore, why don't we just paste it in? We'll just paste it in and then make the money.
Another thing was, you know that Dominion fleet in DS9 that vanishes in Season 4?
Yes.
You run into that in the game. It comes back and takes over DS9, and you fight them. That is awesome.
That is very neat, I gotta say, because it makes sense. They had to have gone somewhere. They weren't just zero-summed. When you look at the Nostalrius server, that is untapped potential. And it shows that, all the people who have ever said you can't relive the past are full of themselves. They're 100% full of shit. Because I can pull out an Atari, an old Atari, and I can call some fans over there who will like the thing. And you know what? A Model T? Model Ts aren't relevant anymore because you can't relive the past? Bullshit. There's a place called Firehorse Ranch that I was at where this guy was working on a Model T, and he had a fan club who came and took pictures and everything. These were young kids. You can't relive the past. That argument has been used again and again and again as to why not to support vanilla servers. And it is utterly bullshit. Because people will always wish for things they had before, and other people will look at stuff from before their time. 90% of the people will be like, what's that crap? But then there's 10% of the people who are in awe of the past. These are the historians of the future, cultural historians.
One thing I want to buy is a classic radio because I've played so much Fallout.
Yes.
And I just want the thing that dressed up my living space, and it's cool.
Exactly.
And then if I wanted to, I could gut it and put my own iPod stuff in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could probably find the case to one, the I don't want to say chassis, but,
I found one at a local pawn store I wanted to buy.
Yeah. But when you come right down to it, the point is that archival of video games is a very necessary thing.
There was actually a really interesting article a few months ago for Game Informer that I wanted to follow up on, but I didn't get a chance. It was talking about game archiving in a museum, similar to the film from the 1940s and stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole thing with this lawsuit and everything. And the problem with digital products is they're basically immortal. And companies think they're entitled to that product forever now because they're immortal. At some place, they should enter a public domain of sorts.
I was going to say they aren't immortal. That's the thing is the problem.
Relatively.
Yeah. No, what I was going to say is the problem is that it was originally the life of the author for not only books, but any kind of intellectual property. It was the life of the author. Then it was the life of the author plus 30 years. Then it was plus 80 years. And Disney is the one who is ridiculously blowing this out of proportion, is doing everything they can to prevent their products from leaving the public domain, because Walt Disney's been dead for a long time. And they're afraid that their intellectual properties are going to enter the public domain. Just imagine public domain Disney stuff.
There definitely should be a place where they can update, like put the most recent variations of it and put it into intellectual property. Like those classic Lion King things. At some point, that should be.
Yeah.
People can expand upon it, but they have to put it. This is an unofficial thing. They have to require by law for that.
I was going to say that. Have you seen Sherlock Holmes? Have you seen
Yeah.
Mark Twain stuff? That's all in the public domain now. That's why you have these ridiculous Sherlock Holmes series. No one
Where there's so
claims.
much Wizard of Oz episodes and all these supernatural shows.
Yes, yes, absolutely. But that's what I'm talking about. Is those have entered the public domain. Now, oddly enough, The Little Mermaid. If you look that up, look up the original story it's based on. Holy crap!
Oh
She
my.
wasn't able to marry. Like, she saved the prince, but the prince, like this Covent girl, ends up taking credit for saving him. You know, she has 3 days to marry him, or she'll become foam on the sea. Well, she killed herself rather than kill the prince, because that was if he wouldn't marry her, the only way to break herself from the curse was to kill the prince, and she refused to do it, and so she died. She gave herself up, and it was a story. It had a moral. Basically, you can't always get what you want. Like, you know, even if you love somebody, you won't necessarily get loved back. It's an important life lesson. And Disney turned it into, she was a rich, entitled girl who got what she wanted at the end.
There is valid in both stories. The first one is more down to earth and everything, but under
Yes.
certain circumstances, the mermaid thing is also true. Depending, all stuff in life, it's under circumstances, and people don't seem to see that
Yeah.
when looking at these contrasts.
No, what I'm saying is, in general, is that, like, that original story still exists, but if you try to call it The Little Mermaid, then Disney's going to come after you. You know, it's Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid or something like that. You have to be very, very careful and not use the likeness of the Disney princess, you know. But
I think the funniest interpretation for new fantasy characters is actually Once Upon a Time, and what's funny is it's owned by Disney, and there's like points of the story like, oh look, Marvel comic books.
yes, yes, indeed.
I have a big problem with this show. Like they say, we don't get anything from the outside. No one comes in. How does your industry run then?
Yes.
And there's no magic at a certain point in the story, so that you can't use that as an excuse.
Yeah. What I was going to say is that as far as that particular series went, you had to assume that people were coming from the outside, but they weren't staying. They just passed through.
A simple explanation would have been
Yeah.
the characters are afraid to leave, and people that do come in feel urged to eventually leave.
Yeah, exactly. That,
All they had to do is write in, but they blatantly said people don't come in from the outside.
yeah.
Yet people do.
Yet people do, because the main character left and then came back as her main plot point. Yeah.
If that happens in the pilot, I could forgive it if they eventually establish a rule. In the pilot for Stargate SG-1, they say you can't go back through an active portal dialing in from home, but Apophis does that in the first pilot.
Well, they could have gone back and because remember, like, this one Goa'uld managed to shoot like this energy beam through that was going to burn the iris and stuff like that. Like, the point is that whenever you have a rule, like the iris, for example, there's always a way to circumvent it. You know, there when you have pseudoscience, you know, something that is impossible.
As long as it's able to go into the suspension of disbelief.
Exactly.
And you make it very rare. For example, the Lazarus pit in Arrow, they said they could resurrect people, but they have this bloodlust. Really sloppy writing, but they eventually destroyed it.
Yes.
So they couldn't do that anymore.
Exactly. But no, the Lazarus pit, you know, Batman?
Arrow was...
Oh, Arrow.
Arrow
Okay.
was originally inspired by the Dark Knight Christian Bale series. Now it's gotten kind of funny with when the Flash went in.
Yes.
I think all the good writing went to the Flash. I've kind of stopped watching Arrow actively because one sister that was really awesome got killed in season 3. They brought her back to life. She went to a time travel show. The other sister now got killed again. And the original sister that was killed also was lost for a time, so the father thought she was dead twice.
Yeah.
And now she's back to life again, and now the other sister's died, and I like...
No. Here's the thing. I stopped watching television, so all the things you're talking about, I won't see for another couple of years until I can get, like, the complete series online.
Oh, I watch it on Netflix.
Yeah.
Or
Okay. So
on their associated website.
yeah. What it comes down to is when you write a television series, it usually is written for one season. completely. Like, like you'll see a single plot thread that leads itself from the beginning of the first season to the end of the first season, after which it goes to hell because the guy who wrote the original screenplay isn't there anymore. That's usually what happens.
The second season of Arrow is actually the best.
That's interesting.
That's when Deathstroke comes in.
Yes, I do remember hearing about that.
And then they disappeared because of Suicide Squad movie.
Oh my goodness.
Actually, I think some of the best writing that I've encountered in recent years is actually the Star Wars Rebels cartoon.
I haven't seen that because it was a cartoon.
Me and Rowan, I think, are going to cover it on a MT Mini.
Interesting. When it comes down to these intellectual properties, I am working on my own right now. And I already have a website up for it. I have the trademark and copyright, there. So I can talk about it without having to worry. But the thing is that, like, I still have to be very careful about other people using my intellectual property rights. Once they use it for cash, then your trademark's in danger. Your trademark is in danger of being generalized. And that's why, have you ever been to Adobe's website and, like, looked up their definition of Photoshop?
Mm-hmm.
They have this very strict thing about you are not to use the word photoshopped and how the word Photoshop is supposed to be used. We're going to use Photoshop. Not, this has been photoshopped. This has been edited with Adobe Photoshop, They go on and on about this because they're trying their best to fight the generalization, because once photoshopped becomes a term, like an
Kleenex.
Kleenex. Yes, yep. Exactly. And so that's the big problem, is if they had renamed World of Warcraft to Nostalrius and they had replaced the World of Warcraft assets, like all the graphics and stuff, with their own, then Blizzard would have probably ignored it. But the problem is that because it's still called World of Warcraft and it still uses the World of Warcraft client, if World of Warcraft becomes generalized, then they'll lose the trademark.
Well, no, ultimately, I think there is a good middle ground that Blizzard should have pursued. Basically, what they did was the lazy version. Instead of, we're going to shut you down for a little bit, let's work with you because there's obviously demand here, and we'll see what it can work out. In the end, you have to take it down, but there's a chance we could bring it back up in another way. And the way Blizzard perceived it, it was like them just being lazy on their part.
Yeah. I mean, it's a case of, this is ours, and you can't do it anymore. That's pretty much it. And
if they license it, their trademark is protected.
Correct.
Because it's official.
Exactly. No, because they are the licensee is paying to have that trademark. Therefore, it is all intact. And
same thing with the Axanar thing. If CBS went in and said, "Okay, we need to address this. You have to take it down, but there's a chance we could bring it back up under another way." Same thing, and they could probably have actually made some money off it too.
No, my friend has had to use SolidWorks for something, but he had like an old version of SolidWorks for like Windows 3.1, and he wanted to have this particular software used in a professional context, but he needed the license for it, because otherwise he couldn't use it professionally for his business. And so, you know what? He contacted the company, said he had this code. Can you please give me a new license for it? And they said send us $1. And so they sent him back the new license code. Literally, because they don't support that old version anymore, so they can't actually give him anything, like in terms of like a new disc or anything. But they just said, this is an unlimited license that you bought for $1. Like, it is not transferable. It only works for you, but it is an unlimited use license, unlimited number of computers, so on and so forth, as long as it's only you who's using it. Mm-hmm. And that's how they addressed it. It was a monetary transaction. It's like a lawyer who will say, who you ask for legal advice from and he won't give it to you, but then you hand him $1 and all of a sudden attorney-client privilege is there. There are ridiculous things you have to do sometimes under the law, and they're not willing to do because they didn't see the need to. What I was going to say earlier was that I've worked in several group projects, none of which I'll see money for, but I didn't care about it back then. Now I care about it because I realize, number one, time is money, And number two, if someone contributes to the project and suddenly says, no, I don't want my work used for this anymore because they had a falling out with one of the developers, like, you have to then scrap either the whole project or every part of that project that had their work in it. How ridiculous is that? Mm-hmm. So, like, this stuff has to be clearly defined, like when you work in group projects. Unfortunately, that mine mentality...
Seagulls from Finding Nemo.
Holy shit. Okay. It bleeds into everything, including corporate culture, including screwing over your own fans. Are they the same Blizzard from 10 years ago? I don't think they are. You know, I can't tell you that they're not the same Blizzard, but I can tell you that their corporate culture has changed significantly. And their goals and agendas and everything, like... I'm almost certain that if 10 years ago someone said, I want to create a Warcraft fan game, you know, can I have your blessing? That, you know, they'd get back like they'd be like, you're good to go, you know? But now it's tied up in corporate interests where, well, this is going to infringe on our main product and cut our bottom line. Axanar, Nostalrius, it all boils down to business versus hobby. And why can't they go hand in hand? You know, why can't companies respect their fans? Why can't, even better yet, companies work with their fans? Because if their idea is good enough, then it doesn't need to stay a fan project. It can become an actual thing. Valve understands this, which is why the people who made Nubacular Drop were hired to make Portal. It's why the people who made Team Fortress were hired to make Team Fortress Classic and later Team Fortress 2. Again and again and again, the people who made Alien Swarm, a free mod, were hired to make Alien Swarm for Valve. The point is, Valve gets it. And I don't think these other companies quite understand why people, even with some of the shitty things Valve has done in terms of their Steam and their lack of support and their...
It's more like the reason that exists is just they're too big and they don't have that many hands.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, even with like the horrible greenlight system and some of the really bad things that are up on Steam, all of these things together, it doesn't matter because they have garnered such support and they've cultivated that support. I don't think Blizzard's doing the same thing, and I definitely know Paramount isn't. So. That's all I have to say on it.
If it's good enough, work with your fans companies. Don't just shut them down because there's some hard work that was put in there and you could profit from it. Instead of just, nope, bye.
Exactly. So, Migrant Thought, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and where we can find more of your videos?
Well, I'm relatively new YouTuber. My stuff is on Migrant Thought YouTube channel. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm pretty active on that. It's Matt Allen Z on the Twitter. You can find the link on the little dashboard and everything. That's pretty much all I have for it right now. I'm doing a Let's Play of a visual novel / dating sim called Roommates. Thinking of actually doing a long-form YouTube editorial / video review of mods since the GEC is finally out.
Yeah, whereas I'm more Elder Scrolls, he tends to gravitate more towards the Fallout. So, you know, if he does cover a mod that I'm actually interested in, chances are I will probably call attention to that particular review in the future. But for now, links to his channel will be in the video description, and that's about it. Thank you all for watching, and y'all have a good one.